TSN hockey analyst Frank Corrado, a former Vancouver Canuck, as we approach the trade deadline here with still plenty swirling around our hockey club. How we doing, Frank?
I'm good. I don't know, like for people who can watch the podcast, they can obviously see that I have a headset on now, so I can take your order. Double double. What do you Boston cream?
Proceed to the next
Overtime
window.
win.
Do
What
I
do you
get my
want?
food here, or do I go to the next window for the food?
Yeah,
Unclear.
pay up front.
What if I roll up to win the rim to win on the spot? Can you give me my prize right there in the window, Frankie?
Yeah, don't they do that, right? They
I don't think.
gotta do
I don't
that.
think. I don't know. I think you have to circle back
Isn't it
around.
digital now? Isn't it like you
Digital?
scan a QR
Digital.
code
Oh.
now?
Digital rims?
I think so. I think they
I've
got
read-
since COVID, they got rid of like the actual rims. I could be wrong. I don't actually work there, despite my headset. What it would tell you.
And you're not ripping off an 8-hour Call of Duty session anytime soon?
No, that's probably more up Grady's alley, like a 6-pack of Red Bull.
For sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
for sure.
Yeah. And the adult diaper, so he doesn't have to leave
Red
his
Bull,
posts.
Yellow Dog, and Call of Duty. There you go.
Yeah, sorry, honey, can't walk the dog.
Exactly. I'm in the middle. Don't worry. I've never gotten to this level before. Listen, plenty swirling around the Canucks, as mentioned, including this. I mean, you almost never hear of this, that they might just want to move on from Elias Lindholm, that he hasn't worked out here, and they may be looking to flip him for Jake Guentzel. What did you make of all that?
No, not that you might want to move on from him. You absolutely have to move on from him because of what's happened now. You can't let something like that go public of that kind of magnitude, something that we never, ever, ever see. And what, you're not going to move him now, and what, he's supposed to just show up after the trade deadline and be like, well, I guess I don't fit here. I guess they didn't want me here from, I don't know, who knows how long, maybe a couple weeks ago, whatever the case may be. And now what do they tell him? No, we believe in you. Like, you got to be here. We really want you. It's like, I just heard all that stuff. So I don't know how you don't trade him now at this point.
So, like, walk us through this. You're Elias Lindholm. This somehow gets back to you. And yeah, they're credible insiders that had the scoop. Is there any stuffing this genie back in the bottle? Can Canuck management go down to him? Because let's say it blew up or it was false. Can Canuck management go down to him and say, listen, that was not the case. You're not going anywhere. Do you believe it if you're Elias Lindholm?
No, not for a second. Because if something like that goes public from the credible insiders, it's not just thinking out loud like, I wonder, if this could happen. It's like, chances are that's
they went down the road
out there.
Right.
Yeah, like that's been out there and they're going down the road. So I just don't know how you don't make that trade now. I think that's like, for me, in my head, as far as like watching this happen from an outside, or maybe for him, I don't know how he would feel. I can't speak to him, but I don't know how you don't make this trade now. It's just, it would be a really odd look if you had this talk about something of that kind of magnitude and it doesn't happen, and now he's just got to show up and play, and it's like, I don't know how you move on from that.
Does Guentzel get them further ahead here?
Well, I think Guentzel's a better fit based on where the team is at right now. I think when you go back and look at things, prior to the Lindholm trade, they had the Lotto line together. So it really accentuated the need for a second line center. But the Lotto line fizzled out, and Pettersson and Miller are playing on separate lines. So now all of a sudden you make this big trade for Lindholm, and it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit anymore because he's not going to be your third line center when your lineup is healthy, and he doesn't seem like he's a natural fit on the wing. And enter Jake Guentzel, who's a natural fit on the wing and who has a lot of familiarity with a lot of the people who make decisions in Vancouver. And how about the playoff pedigree of Jake Guentzel? Like, the year that they went to the Stanley Cup Finals and won, when he was on the team, he was a massive part. He had 13 goals in 25 games. The next year, they lost to Washington. He had 10 goals in 12 games. And then, as of 2 years ago, the last time the Penguins were in the playoffs, 8 goals in 7 games, all in the playoffs. Like, this guy scores goals in the playoffs. So, I mean, when you look at all the evidence there, as far as what's a better fit for the Canucks, it absolutely is Jake Guentzel. But, like we were talking previously, about how good of a fit Elias Lindholm was on the Canucks because they were playing the lotto line together, and Pius Suter was not going to be your second line center in the playoffs. The fact that they've constructed the lines now the way they have, that has changed things to the point that Lindholm is no longer a better fit in the lineup.
What didn't work? What didn't work for Lindholm though? Like, why is it not working on the ice?
He's got to play in the middle of the ice for sure. Which now he's third line center, whatever you want to call it. I think it's one of those things where he was familiar with how Calgary operated. He played on a really good line a couple of years ago, and you could even see his game drop off a little bit in Calgary when those players left. Like, it just didn't seem like he was the same kind of guy. So you put him in another position in Vancouver where, he gets off to a great start for sure, power play, all that kind of stuff. But he's playing with different players, it seems like, quite a bit. He's not playing higher in the lineup down the middle of the ice where he's the most comfortable. So you're not exactly, even though he's a veteran guy, really good player, you're not exactly putting him in the best position to say, this is your spot and here you go. And it's just a lot of moving around for the player. It's not exactly easy to jump on a moving train that way.
They've already given up Kuzmenko, Brestevich, a first-round pick, and in either a third or fourth. It's conditional. Would you give up more for Guentzel, or do you have to just draw the line and say, look, we've given up a load here for a player on January 31st, right? This is 6 weeks later.
Well, you get something back for Lindholm. So you do get, you have that.
No, but I mean, is it just become straight across the board? You move Lindholm, I guess Boston's involved here.
Mm-hmm.
Boston moves whatever to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh moves Jake Guentzel to Vancouver, and it's player in, player out, no further assets. What do you think, Frankie?
I don't know. I don't know how you make this deal for Guentzel without a good prospect. The Penguins have been very vocal about how they don't necessarily care about draft picks. They want players that they could turn around in a hurry and help that team kind of turn the corner. So if I'm Pittsburgh, I see two players. I see Lekkerimaki and I see Willander. And
in addition to a prospect from Boston, though, because you're getting something back for Lindholm. You're getting Fabian Lysell, right? So,
I get it, but I don't know how Vancouver gets off this deal without giving up something substantial.
Wow.
I guess, I don't know. It's going to be very complex for sure, and I get that Boston is involved, but all we hear from general managers are prices are ridiculous. Prices are really high. So I don't know how you start getting discounts when it comes to the number one trade target on the board. And it'll obviously be complex, and Vancouver doesn't want to part with those kinds of players either. But I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see how this shakes out, because it's obviously gonna be quite intricate.
Well, here's how you would get out of this without giving up further. It becomes a buyer's market here in the last 48 hours. When you take a look at the playoff race and teams like Washington, Pittsburgh, teams that have effectively declared themselves as sellers now, and the separation in the wild card race, could you see prices coming down in the next 48 hours with where the standings are, particularly the wild card standings right now?
I know we're starting to see it now. It seems like this year, and at least it's a little bit later in the year where we kind of know what the playoff picture is going to look like. I feel like in years past it was already predetermined. Prices have to come down. They're not going to be that high. Take a look at the trade bait board. Look at the names on there. Outside of Guentzel, Hanifin, and Jacob Markstrom, you could pick any one of those guys that's on the board, and next year change the last name, and it's going to be basically the exact same player, similar cap hit. They're just a lot of the same kind of guy that we see year after year. For me, there's three guys that are real difference makers, and I would even say that Toffoli is probably closer to that top tier than he is just the everyday kind of guy. But that's the thing when you're looking at these UFAs and guys that are on expiring deals. How much are you possibly willing to give up for those players at this point to have them for, one playoff series? If two playoff series?
No. Mantha's a 20-goal scorer this season already with very sheltered minutes and situations. he's effectively a second round pick because that fourth rounder is like 80 years from now and can
Right.
be recuperated. Like,
and with 50% retention.
Yes.
Like I thought
Yeah.
that was a
That's cheap.
very
and he's a flawed
reasonable
player. He's a flawed player,
price
but that's
for
nothing.
Vegas.
You're not paying anything for him.
And that's what it needs to be. Like that's
Yeah.
honestly, like we're talking about seconds, thirds, fourths, and I don't know. Like that's how like you can't run an operation and an organization and start giving up like legitimate future pieces for guys that aren't going to be in your picture much longer. Like the guys that have a year attached to them, like someone like Vetrano. Yeah, that's a guy who gets a little bit more because he's
Right.
got one more year attached to him. Someone like David Savard, someone's going to really have to knock the socks off the Canadians to bring that guy in because he's got one more year at 3.5, and he's a very dependable defenseman.
Give us the scouting report. Go,
on
go
both
deeper
of
on
those
that.
players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought the Vetrano contract, when Anaheim signed that deal, I looked around at other teams that are like good, like teams that are in the mix, and I thought, how is a better team not making that deal for this guy? Like he's been a good goal scorer in the past, and it's just over, it's 3.5, something like that. It's in the threes, and it's like I would have been willing to make that deal for a guy. Let's say you put him on your third line and you get some production that way. I like him. He's got a great shot. He's been really good on the power play. He's got a sneaky way of kind of maneuvering around the ice and getting his shot off. He plays with some jam. Like
He's
I
a
like
bit of a
him.
fire hydrant, right? Like he's
Yeah,
he's
a thicker, stockier kind of
Yeah.
guy, and he's not afraid to play with a little bite, a little bit of jam. So I like him. I think he's going to be a great addition. The David Savard one has just recently started picking up a little bit of steam, but like I'm fortunate enough, like I get to watch Montreal on a very regular basis. And I can't remember if you and I, if we have talked about this or not, but there's something that happens there in Montreal. Every time one of those young defensemen, whether it's been Gouli or Struble or Jack-Eye or Harris, all good young defensemen, anytime they stub their toe for a game or maybe a week of games, guaranteed they will get paired with David Savard, and it's like instant. They just settle down and they play calm and they settle into their role. And Marty St. Louis had Savard and Matheson playing together for quite a bit of the year. Gouli's been really consistent, so that allowed Gouli to go with Matheson and put Savard with any one of those young guys, and he plays 20 minutes. Like
that sounds
Savard,
very Tanevian, you know?
It is. And the thing with that player, it's different than Luke Shen. It's different than Ilya Lyubushkin. It's different than even Matt Dumba in the sense that those guys are probably better suited at 15 to 17 minutes, and that's who they are. Savard plays 20 minutes, and he does it pretty well. Like last night, the Canadians against Nashville, he scores a pretty fluky goal, but he was outstanding. He was really, really good. So I'm a big fan of his game, but I think it's going to take a big offer because for Montreal, they're still really trying to nurture that young group of defensemen, and to take that guy out, it's going to take a quite substantial offer. But it's different. That's why it's different than the rental market.
Is that a first round pick, Frank?
I would be more considering a first round pick because you will have him next year, and it's $3.5 million. It's not crazy, and like he's good defensively. He's better than you think with the puck. He blocks shots. Like he is one of the best shot blockers in the NHL, and he missed a lot of games this year because he blocked a shot and it hit him in the hand or the forearm, and I think that knocked him out for over 20 games. But I mean, he's really good at that, and that's something that kind of goes unnoticed, I think, when you talk about a lot of these analytics, expected goals against, all that kinds of stuff. But push comes to shove in the playoffs, you need a big block shot. Like he's the kind of guy who's going to lay out and block.
Would you take a 25 first round pick? Just ask him for a friend.
You're coming around on Savard, huh? He was poo-pooing Savard yesterday,
good
Frank,
review.
but now he hears you, and
I
all
like
of a
him.
sudden he's jumping on board.
I like him because I've seen him a lot, and I think and it's a better fit because you're not asking him to do too much. I think that's the thing that really drives it home for me. And the same could be said for Vancouver as far as Savard, as Toronto, and I mean you name the team. Like there's a number of teams that could use a guy like that, but that's why I think the price is going to be expensive, because if you do really covet this kind of guy with another year remaining, and sometimes, I don't know if you guys feel this way, you see a player with a little term on the deal, and you think, I don't know if I want that next year. Like maybe I do want the rental, right? Like it could deter you a little bit, but I feel like with him, one more year, it's just the right sweet spot
Yep.
where you don't have him for 2 more years. It's one more year. I can't imagine he's going to fall off that much. And if he does, guess what? He's a UFA, and you cut your losses at that point.
Yep. I'm 100% with you. And he's massive too, Frank. Like, and they
Big
love their
beard.
big defensemen.
Like, there's
here.
something to be said for a big beard in the playoffs. You know, like
Did I not shout the beard yesterday?
Beard per 60 is high.
Exactly.
Okay, let me ask you this though, because
Vetrano and Savard under contract next year that you'd feel good about.
I the more I watch the Oilers, the more you have to McDavid proof your team. Does Savard help you in that, or is his foot speed going to be a problem at his age and his size? I mean, I don't think you can fully McDavid proof your team. I mean, he's just on another level right now. He just decides, I'm going to win this game for my team. And I don't know that you can stop it. Does he get you further along in that regard, Savard, or is there somebody else that springs to mind that gets you a little bit closer? Because again, there's no secret to stopping McDavid. He's that good. But if
ultimately, Blake, I think he helps you, but he's not the answer. Like he's not it's not like David Savard is coming in and all of a sudden you have the answer for McDavid. I think we saw the answer for McDavid last year in the playoffs, and it was Vegas, and it was 4 good centers and 6, solid, big, strong defensemen. Like that's the answer for McDavid, where, it doesn't really matter. Well, it does matter a little bit, but you can get by on some matchups that maybe you're supposed to lose because you got guys who can skate well, who are big, who have some reach, who take care of, the defensive side of the puck. Like, it seems to me that's the best answer for McDavid. And I think there's teams now that are looking at who they're going to play in the first round of the playoffs or at some point in the playoffs. And, the teams in the Pacific are going to look at McDavid. I think the teams in the Atlantic are going to look at David Pastrnak. Like, I'm watching Toronto, and I'm like, they got no answer for Pastrnak because he plays the right wing, and their left side of the ice is Morgan Rielly, Simone Benoit, and TJ Brody. And the left wingers are, Nyes, Bertuzzi. Just go down the list. It's like he has a field day on that side of the ice. How do you stop McDavid? He's in the middle. He's everywhere. So it's hard. It's hard to really pinpoint how you stop him.
But it's a great point. If he's coming down his left wing, he's attacking the right side defenseman on his forehand. So it's a fabulous point that you're going to have to be able to deal with certain kinds of players in certain areas of the ice in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's when we, boil down the game to finer points, right? And everything sticks out and everything gets magnified in a 7-game series. Lastly, outside of Lindholm Guentzel, because you're declared on that, but let's say they just keep Lindholm, there is no further activity there with Guentzel. Would you be okay if the Canucks stood pat, or do you think they need to do something here?
Well, I'm going to say that they need to move Lindholm now because it's too noisy. And when that messaging gets out, I don't know how you bring him back in now. And maybe you just tell him, like, listen, business is business. We wanted to move you. We didn't. Now you need to kind of suck it up and play here. But I don't know how that conversation goes down. So I think you need to move Lindholm at this point. If they don't, then that's who you got. You got to hope that if he's going to play in the top 6, he can find a little something on the wing, because ultimately when your third line is back and healthy, that line's going back together. And you've maybe found a little something here with Pettersson and Miller playing on different lines. The other, I don't know how you guys feel about the wingers right now, but I feel like, man, I would love to see an upgrade on Pettersson's wingers at this point.
Well, on that note, did the Canucks miss the boat on Tarasenko going with him in Florida?
I don't. I mean, he's had a good year. He's been a good player. He's a secondary market kind of guy. But that's why I think, like, Tarasenko, Vetrano, like, I don't know, go down the list. Buchnevich, Toffoli, Anthony Mantha got traded already. Riley Smith, like, there's a lot of guys that are in the same kind of category, just give or take a little bit of what makes them different. So that's why I say it's like, it's the big three up top. Maybe there's like a second tier with like Toffoli, and I think it's a lot of, similar kinds of players. So I don't necessarily think they missed the boat on that. The other thing is Tarasenko had a full no move, so he decided
he had some say. He wanted there. He wanted to go there apparently. So
lastly, your trade deadline trade center duties. It's Francesco, Gino, and Carlo on a panel.
There's going to be a little Italian segment, I believe, at some point, if we need to fill some time. So we'll see how that goes. No, I'll be out there on the more on the side desk with Brian Hayes, Carlo. I think Emily Kaplan is going to be in the mix with us. So like I'm hoping there's a lot of trades, so we don't really have to get into should defensemen protect themselves when they're near the boards more nowadays.
Wait.
Hey, you've got our numbers.
I'm sorry.
Text.
I'm sorry. If you're telling me there's an Italian segment planned for a slow trade center, I want to see nothing happen until that Italian
That's right.
segment
Yes.
runs.
Yeah.
Get some sauce out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we can't do the Italian segment without shouting our boy Piero Mineta here.
Piero Mineta. Yeah, I gotta get some viz.
Yes, there you go.
I gotta arrange some viz for that.
Right.
Here's the sign of a good beard. Okay, this is how you know someone has a good beard. They cannot eat soup. If you cannot eat soup or ice cream, that's a good beard.
Sure is. You're a good one too, Frank Corrado. Thanks for this. We'll catch up next week.
All right, boys. Thanks. See ya.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.